Awesome. All right, welcome everybody. Call the meeting to order. Before we get started tonight, this will be a quick attendance. I can never remember who takes that, so.
Happy to. Michael Aronson, here. Bill Maria,
Here.
Carla Elliott, here. Eric Talbot,
Here.
and Chair Roy.
I'm here, and I'll just note that Bill is an alternate member, but because we have 4 regular members in attendance, Bill will be eligible to vote this evening. Okay. All right, so I guess the first item is the approval of the May 23rd meeting minutes. I just want to make sure we have a forum for that group of things. We do. We may not. No, I think we're good. Yeah, I'm looking at that right here. So myself, Michael, Carla, Eric, and Phil. So we're good. So we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from last week.
Are we here? Looking to open the minutes from the last meeting?
Approve the minutes and a second.
Michael Aronson, second.
All right, any objections? No objections. All right, so the minutes are approved. Okay, so we'll jump right into things tonight. We've got, we're going to start with new business. First item up is Planning Board 05/2022. This is 62 Water Street, the wire mill, and this is a request for a 1-year extension for a conditional use permit and for a site plan, which was all the way back to June 28th, 2022. So we have the applicant here. If you guys can just come speak and just let us know what the application is for. I think really what we're trying to just ascertain here is, what if anything has changed since the approval was granted a year ago.
Basically, nothing within.
I'm sorry, can you just introduce yourself? I'm sorry, can you just introduce yourself as well for the record as well?
Yes, Bob Fettigan from the Wire Mill LLC. And my brother and I own the wire mill. And shortly after we got approval from this board last year, our architect got seriously ill. So we were out of commission about 6 months, and it was only recently that we finally got the stamped final drawings. And so I thought it important to come before the board. We're still anxious to do the project, especially the parking lots connected with it, to improve those. So I would really appreciate it if we could get an extension for the year.
Okay, and so you're saying you now have final stamped approved drawings, so you're ready to start the permitting process?
We're ready to start applying for the building permit probably in the fall.
Okay.
We would start. So between now and then we'll be drawing up things. I might remind the board that we were a brownfields cleanup program. We cleaned it up to restricted residential. So there's some hoops that we have to jump through to respect the macadam on the parking lots. But we're very comfortable with the plan that was approved by the board a year ago.
And nothing has changed with those plans?
Nothing changes with those plans.
And you're ready for permitting in the fall and when you hope to start construction?
Well, we would start some of it probably late fall and through winter. Most of it's inside the building.
Right.
So it's a good time to do it in the late fall, winter, so on.
Okay. Board members, questions?
I don't have any.
Right. Are there any staff comments on this application?
Very minor. They're all going to be conditions of the resolution.
And those will be the same conditions that we had a year ago. So nothing has changed from your perspective.
No, there's no new memo. It was the memo
Right.
from
Yeah,
last
yeah.
year, so everything is already in. So you're going to extend it subject to the same conditions as in the original resolution.
This is an extension, so it's not a public hearing. So if there are no other questions from the board or from staff, I think we can move forward with the resolution to approve the application.
Michael Aronson, motion to approve the application with the conditions as outlined in the previous approval.
Or Talbot, second.
All right, we'll do a roll call.
Okay. Michael Aronson,
Aye.
Eric Talbot.
Aye.
Carla Elliott. Aye. Bill Maria,
All right.
and Chair Roy.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much.
I thank the board.
Very good.
Good night.
Okay, Our next item on the agenda, and I'm just gonna make sure that my notes are consistent with anything that may have been updated recently, is BAR 04-2023. This is 90 South Highland. And this is an amendment to a prior BAR approval granted by this board in March of this year. So I'll invite the applicant up, just introduce yourself briefly, and I think we will control the slideshow from here. And you guys can walk us through what the changes are.
Janet Brand, 6 Barnes Road, Austin, New York.
David Spells, 6 Barnes Road, Austin, New York.
We were approved, we were going ahead with the project. And somebody had mentioned, why are you keeping that dormer? Well, what happened was when the people started working on it, it basically crumbled beneath them. Go ahead, you want to say something?
The right side that wasn't going to be that wasn't part of the previous approval started to crumble, and this just makes for a better apartment overall.
Okay, so we're focusing on that volume that has 3 windows up on the
On the right side, yeah.
top floor, yeah, on the right side of
Because
the drawing.
everything from the middle window to the left was approved. So now we're just matching the elevation. Because we would have either had to have demolished it and rebuilt it to still have a slope ceiling and still the same square footage with right down to 3.5, 4 feet and just have a terrible apartment, or we could just match it straight across and make a better apartment.
All right, and I think we have one other elevation, right, which would be if you were looking at it from the right side of this drawing. Are they separate?
No,
Should see the elevations, just one.
I think it's just one page, the elevations.
Yes.
Yeah, this is it.
I think there was something.
There's photos.
Right, so the original application was to,
So this is what it's going to end up looking like, because when the roof was open, we ran into a lot of rain and we had to rush to close it. Because we had electric that was done, we had HVAC ductwork that was already installed and floors beneath it, so we couldn't just leave it open.
The worst part of it, we don't have the steps yet. So there is a ladder that goes up from the 2nd floor,
They don't,
and they didn't care that they made me go up that ladder thinking I was going to die so I can get onto the 3rd floor and see all the wood rot. And honestly, we've been running into problems as, I know, but they've been running into problems, as we go along, and we want to keep the architectural integrity of the building and make it look as good as we can in keeping with the charm of the village.
I'm sorry, can you just refresh for us what was previously approved versus what you're showing now?
So-
Because I'm having a hard time
so
remembering.
so if we go back to, it would be everything on the left, which brought to a dormer middle section.
What we were looking at with the photographs.
it was, I think it's maybe the L.
They have paint lines, I think, the
Yeah.
original approved roof line on the drawing itself.
So. Right, so from that center window, everything to the left was previously approved.
When you say center
On
window,
the
you're
right drawing, on the top, everything from the left was.
everything to the left, so it was 2 windows plus that addition there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so you're just adding a 3rd window.
well, we're changing the roof line, so it's consistent straight across the back.
And I think my only question relative to that is on that return wall, are there any windows or is it just a blank wall?
For now, it's just a blank wall.
Okay, so there's no windows, that just returns exactly,
You're right.
so, so it'd be fully symmetrical to what you're seeing on, if you can just, I don't know, I'll identify the drawing there, that elevation.
Yes,
But no windows, because we don't see any drawings of it, so
No,
all
there's
we
no
can
window.
understand.
That's
is-
the staircase above the 3 windows. It's a staircase.
Right, now I realize the staircase is on this side, but on the opposite side,
No,
which
right,
we're not
there's no-
looking at,
there's.
so, okay. And all the materials are, I mean, this is just a continuation of what was previously
Same.
looked at, so we're really just taking an asymmetrical condition that was previously approved and making it symmetrical.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on the board on this?
I have a question. I understand you're gonna get more room in the top of that dormer there by doing that, creating that a knee wall, and so it's not such a steep pitch roof, and I think that doesn't seem out of whack or out of line with the size of the building. But I do wonder about the window placement, not knowing what the interior rooms look like, but now that kind of changes the volume of the upper part. And are they, they're not, they're still the same. I don't know what's going on the inside. It doesn't really matter.
It's
But
living space. It's like
Floor
common
space.
common living space.
it just looks a little more like there's more blank on the edges of that dormer. Because now you've extended the roof line, the third floor is a fuller floor, it's a full floor. And so it feels like those windows are kind of crunched together while everything else is like a little more spread out. It's just an observation. And since you don't show any windows changing, I assume that that's where you propose to put them. Okay,
And those windows are exactly as, to Eric's point, those are the same windows that were on the original elevation.
Well, no, because there's no middle section of it. I mean, there's no middle section. There are new windows.
Understood, but within the original approval, those windows,
I don't believe there was a left window up on the right section in the original plan, but there should have been.
okay,
Like the left, on the top row on the left one. There might have been an architectural oversight on that one, but there should have been a window there.
Do you should have all the, is there a history?
well, it's a new application.
Right, but if you went back like just a couple months, you really wanted to, I mean, that's,
Yeah,
Yeah, so we, no, it was in March.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm still screen sharing.
yeah, the March 16th meeting.
Thank you.
play some music in the background while.
I can sing, I can, beatbox, whatever feels right.
I would love the beatboxing, actually.
You had a good time, Chair Roy.
While this is loading. Are there, no, I mean, we went through the questions, is there anything else on the board? Maybe we could actually open, have a motion, we have to open a public hearing, it's a VAR application. While we're about to look at this, and have a motion to open a public hearing,
Eric's how to make the motion to open the public hearing.
Carly, second the motion.
any objections? No objections, motion carries. We are now in a public hearing, is there anybody here in this room tonight who is here to speak to this application? Do not see any hands. And I can't see the Zoom window right now while it's loading, but if you are
No
one of
hands.
the three attendees, no hands. Okay, so let's hold tight before we close this, just so we can see this drawing and finalize our conversation.
Try this a different way.
Right, just the HTML as opposed to the full PDF.
Right one?
No, March 16th. Remember, there was 2 meetings in March because we had to,
We had to
Oh,
schedule
wait,
that.
yeah, it's just only. Yep. There we go. Okay, plans and elevations. How's
Look
that?
at that. So that's the side.
Is
go to
this
the
still
middle.
90?
Very helpful, very helpful.
Yeah.
So there's that one bay window in the center, because got these 3 windows spread out, and that goes kind of the full width of that elevation. All right, so very helpful. It does this. I actually think it looks a lot nicer what they're proposing right now. I think, like, my only concern is just the one wall that we can't see. And if, as long as that's, there's no windows on there, I mean, we can understand what that is. I think it would be helpful for that drawing to be submitted as part of the building application, just so that's a record. I don't know how we can address that one missing drawing here.
We are going to submit a round of changes as well. We can include that side. The right side elevation is part of our building, permit.
We can make it a condition of approval that the applicant resubmit
what elevation is that?
Right,
That's
right.
Right.
the south.
Yeah,
The south elevation?
and it's, the building to the right is on this property.
Right.
So it doesn't impact any of the neighbors.
Right, no, and I think it's, you know, I think we're good here, so, one last chance for board members for questions. All right, can I have a motion to, close the public hearing on this application?
Michael Aronson.
All right. No, Michael, after you.
Michael Aronson motion to close the public hearing.
Eric Talbot, I second motion.
Any objections? No objections, motion carries, public hearing is closed. Okay, so, staff, have we covered all the questions? I think we talked about one condition here. All right, so without any further ado, then can we have a motion to approve the application with the conditions?
Could we make a motion to approve this application with a condition?
Right, and the condition being the, you know,
Condition to be
provision of the south.
Resubmission of the south field of the drawings.
With the appropriate windows.
Right, or, right, and no, well, actually, no windows we're asking for on that wall. Because that's what was stated during the hearing. Okay, and a second,
Second motion. Eric
and
Talbot.
we'll do a roll call.
Eric Talbot,
Here, yes. Zach.
Carla Elliott. Aye. Bill Maria.
Aye.
Michael Aronson. Aye. And Chair White.
All right, motion carries. Thank you guys very much. All right, we're gonna move on now to another new application. This is planning board, PennDOT 2023 and a PAR 08-2023. This is 99 Croton Avenue. I'm actually gonna ask if we can get just like a high level, Valerie, just a brief introduction on this one before we let the applicant speak. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, so this application is one that is being proposed under your Houghton Avenue overlay district. So this particular application, there's a couple of different layers. I think we talked a little bit about this last week. But basically, there are specific zoning, specific regulations that are associated with the Croton Avenue overlay district. This particular site is an existing building, so they are planning to expand that existing building and then use this overlay district regulations to accommodate the new development. So as a result of that, there are variances that are potentially necessary. And in the zoning, in the Croton Avenue overlay district, it does allow the zoning board to vary some of the requirements. But if you don't agree with varying those requirements, then they would have to go to the zoning board of appeals. In addition, there are other zoning chapter provisions that you cannot vary, and those would need zoning variances. So we can kind of walk everybody through that
Yeah,
as we go through the application.
sure.
But so that is where I think the first step is ultimately, once you feel comfortable with the site plan, to refer it over to the ZBA.
Right. And understanding what goes to the ZBA and what maybe does not.
Right.
Okay, so thank you, JB. If you can give us just kind of our your summary presentation of the project.
Well, 99 Crown Avenue is,
And Maddie, can we bring up the drawings?
Sure.
You want to start with the plans, which drawings? Is it all in one?
just all in one. We can start with the location. This is if everybody's familiar with the location, is across from Seatown. There is a couple all older buildings or residents that are set back from the sidewalk. And this is a 5,600 square feet lot. And like Valerie mentioned, right now there's a use as a commercial building. And what we're proposing is to convert that into a three-bedroom units development.
So it's fully commercial right now.
Yeah. a certain point in the past, I'm sure this was a resident that has a two-car garage detached in the back. Next sheet. Again, this one. Won't allow because this is the one that we need to go through all the explanation. This is the overlay district. If you go a little bit to the down, no, in the site plan, I'm sorry. So that shows the overlay of how the overlay district works in Crown Avenue. So we are required to have suggested to have require a 8-foot sidewalk. And again, that's be one of the variances, or if the planning board feel that the sidewalk as it is, which is, I believe, 6.2, 6 feet 2 inches, then we will keep it as that. Then part of the overlay district is we add in the porch or covering in front of the building. Yeah, so right now the stoops exist. We extended a little bit, and we're making that into a front porch. That kind of goes with the residential style of that neighborhood when it was in the past. Next sheet shows again all the it's a neighborhood commercial street frontage. It's an FR-9, which is the front porch. You have it's basically a zoning table for the overlay district. Next page. That one is how we came about the height averages, and also how we did the tabulation. So we demonstrate that we comply with the habitable area in the district. Then if you, I mean, you should go, those should show demolition. Keep going down. One more. One more. So as you enter the building, you will have one apartment that is connected to the basement. There will be a bedroom in the basement. And it's all, this is a 3-bedroom, and then we have stairs in the back, and those stairs will be the connection to the apartments upstairs. The next level. So that's the existing elevation, and that's what we are doing as part of the overlay district. We are in the porch over the main entrance and the front of the house. Sorry, those PDF warehouse sequence. So this is the second and third apartment. There are duplexes. Basically, we are right on the second floor, and that's where you have the kitchen and living area for both of them. And then as you go upstairs, we have the bedrooms at the top level. This be the rear and the side elevation.
That's the rear existing and proposed, right? That's not.
Yeah, we went to modify.
Existing
Sorry
front.
about that. Yeah, no, that's.
Proposed rear.
It's not the existing front, that's the existing. rear.
Next. So that's the existing and the both side elevation.
That's gonna be the west
Yeah,
down, I guess the downhill side of
Yeah.
it. Avenue.
yeah, and like we did with the other one, next time around, we probably should show the outline of the adjacent buildings, because you will never see this side elevation this way.
Can you just tell me what's going on with that roof line? On the addition?
In addition, it's something like a flat roof line. It is a flat roof going to the back.
There's no, you don't need to have a any kind of parapet railing or,
Yeah, I'm sure there's no parapets, no.
and that'll be code compliant. I mean,
Yeah.
that's been looked at, all right, that looks dangerous, but.
Well, you know, right, it's a flat roof, you will have it's not shown that you will have a gutter system, but you're not gonna have
Yeah, I know, but a guardrail system, you know, just thinking ahead for VAR, we should see everything that's up there.
Okay, right, there's no equipment for up there, so.
Okay,
No access.
no access.
And just, I'm sorry, while we're on that elevation, you're getting rid of some windows and then what is behind the extension, those windows there?
One is the bedroom, and the one is a bedroom and a bathroom.
Okay, so there was a window, if I'm not mistaken, on the
Yes.
existing two windows there,
Yes.
so is that actually gonna be demolished, that portion of the building, and then you're gonna build the extension, or?
That's gonna be reconstructed and recovered, and we can look into to see if we can transfer those windows to the new, maintain those windows as part of the new design.
And that's not a lot line there, is it, on that? That this elevation we're looking at is not a lot line elevation. All right, let's walk through these elevations quickly, and then we'll go back to this, site plan. So this is the opposite side, or the uphill
Right.
side.
And then at the end, this is to give you a picture. This is the other side showing the outline of how the stairs work inside. And then the last page shows you, talk about the portion, the adjacent house, the brick building adjacent to it, and it's mostly commercial adjacent to the sidewalk and the outside. And that's a picture of the rear of the building.
All right, can we go back up to the site plan? I'm just trying to think of the best way to scaffold this, but I think it might help. I think Valerie actually kind of gave, her review summary kind of up on the top. Before I jump to you, Tony, I just want to look a little bit about some of the some of the zoning issues. So if we can go up to that plan, and staff can maybe help answer some of these questions for me, and then I'll let you Tony go on your list. But as far as if we go to like that build to line and all of the form-based kind of code diagrams, you talked about the sidewalk, but you're showing a build, that build to line. So the front of the building should be, is that porch and stoop considered part of the building?
Yeah.
Based on the form-based code, I guess it is, okay, so that portion of the structure, and it's not dimensioned. It'd be helpful to know exactly how far into that zone it extends, and it just kind of looks like it's, I guess, just there. All right, I mean, that was my first comment when I was looking at this, because it's, the building itself doesn't seem to start until several feet back, but if
Right.
the stoop is part of the building, then I guess that's not a comment.
And it's, I'm sorry, just, it is part of one of the, I guess, overlay system or overlay that you put on is called the front porch, so that.
No, I understand that. That's one of the kind of technological things you're adding onto the front of the building. I'm just talking about how the building is situated to the sidewalk, because this is such a deep front yard. All right, that was just a one-off question. I think if we can maybe move this, Tony, because I know that there's some comments there. It'll, I think, help scaffold our site plan review. Maybe you could outline some of those at this point.
Yeah, so our major concern, and we'd love to see more detail on it, is right now you have property next door using the driveway. It's one way in, it seems, around the back, one way out. There are some parking issues where you don't have the backup aisle 24 feet on the 90-degree parking. So
Right, coming out of the garage, yeah.
coming out of the garage, you don't have it. And the parking spaces you have along the back, are you using the neighbor's property for the backup aisle?
We can demonstrate how we can do the maneuvering without going into the neighbor.
Yeah, because that,
I asked the neighbor and I asked our client, there seems to be no legal easement in place.
I was gonna
Okay.
say, there's no easements, it's just been being used that way?
Yeah,
Because it's very clear when you look at it that there is right now a shared one-way
Well,
circulation.
it is definitely a shared entrance. Egress and
And does the
egress.
neighbor know that? This, I mean, are you gonna continue to allow the neighbor to, is that condition going to continue?
Yes,
Then it should be shown.
Yeah,
Site
so we want to
plans.
see kind of what's going on that piece of property. Because you're using their property to come in, they're using your property to get out.
Then how does
And
that play
Probably
into?
could be easements.
Yeah,
If you're gonna
it's not-
approve a site plan that's sort of based on that traffic pattern, the one-way traffic pattern, then there should be an easement.
So next year, when we see the project next door and they're doing something totally different, we don't have a,
Or just so you're approving it based on that circulation. If all of a sudden the neighbor decides, I don't want you on my property anymore, they've lost that circulation.
Yeah.
And that was the basis for your approval.
but if we can demonstrate that we make this site plan work within,
I think the board, I mean, because your driveway is so narrow. That it may be an issue for the board if that driveway is two-way, if that driveway is in and out. I think it's preferable. If that one-way circulation using the neighbor's property can be maintained.
Yeah, because if you close that off, you're trying to get two cars in and out on a 12-foot, you know.
Not even
it's a
12
10
feet.
10 feet, 1 inch, driveway.
right, 3 different residences, people, calling neighbors, can you move your car and they're not home or whatever it is. I mean,
And they
that's-
have parking as well on their side, as you see it on the aerial. So I'm wondering, is this a shared parking space? And then you have this, the one spot that doesn't comply, the 8-foot, 7-inch space along the
right,
side
and
there.
that's part of the,
Um,
Yeah, one of the
Historically-
things that we also noted was the same thing. There's 2 parking spots in the existing garage, like, so will they have enough turnaround? Because
No,
the-
that's why we say,
Yeah.
the code says 90-degree parking, you have to have a 24-foot aisle to back up in, and those spaces don't have it. And we're also wondering what's happening with the other 90s, is there 24 to back out this way, you're coming forward, is it enough room to swing?
Right, so the one-way circulation allows those spaces in the back to be kind of, you pull in and you pull
Yeah.
out. You're not having to back up at all.
Yeah.
The adjacent property is ground floor commercial with residential above. There is residential use in that adjacent property, or is it all commercial? No.
There was an aerial view at some point, right?
I mean, I know there's a ground floor, or there was a ground floor commercial there. I'm not sure what the rest of the building is.
Except when you look at the area, you can see there's just cars everywhere back there, they're all.
Right. And it looks like one big parking lot. I mean,
Yeah.
if you didn't know, it
Yes.
looks like one contiguous field of pavement.
what it is, and that's one of the variances that we need, we'll have to see if that we're within,
landscape plan.
yeah.
Right, but if this seems like it's something more than a variance of trying to get up to the lot line with the driveway, it looks like it's really a shared access that requires an easement. An agreement between the 2 neighbors.
And portion of the
No,
driveway
I
is
think
also
that
on our property, your
If you
property.
can zoom in on the lower. I
This
think
one?
that's- Yeah,
Yeah, it's clear to see the arrows looping around, and then you have a car that's blocking that.
Right, yeah. And then, right, because that whole circulation then depends on not having I mean, I guess, we have to better understand, because if there's an easement between the 2 properties, but they're parking up that entire back and that
Yeah,
Right,
circulation is blocked, then there would need to be some sort of contiguous drive aisle as part of that easement that needs to be maintained pretty clear.
and the neighbor might one day go, no more. If there's no easement in place, then
Right,
put a portion of their asphalt's on your property. That's.
right. It's benefiting, benefiting both properties at the moment, but that's, based on the current layout. Where's the garage here? Oh, is that,
It's straight,
maybe that's straight back?
yeah, you see the black cars in front of it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, right there.
And
And
does
where
the-
that truck is gonna be that.
Does the lot get narrower at that?
yes, it is like, it gets like almost 8 feet narrower.
Okay. So like getting rid of the garage and just continuing the parking down the line isn't an option because of that. Okay.
In the, where the truck is parked is what, if it has been used for parking space, but in actuality is 8.7 feet. So that was what we used as one of the parking space.
And that's right up against the lot line there.
Yeah.
So you're making a narrower spot. It's up against the lot line, not just the lot line, but the lot line wall, because that's where the neighbor's
Right.
garage is. So good luck opening your door.
And then that leads me to another comment we have with the construction sequencing. When you're constructing this, how's it gonna impede the neighbors? And are they gonna be able to still drive around? So we'd like to see all the logistics of how this is gonna be sequenced.
Board comments or questions?
I have just a couple other things. I just
Yeah,
wanna
okay, yeah,
highlight,
go through it.
If it's all right, so in terms of like lighting and landscaping, more information is needed, and specifically, I just want to highlight to this board, there's very specific criteria dealing with landscaping as well as architectural guidelines in the overlay district. So I think it would be best if the applicant provide, like a narrative explaining how his proposed site plan meets those criteria.
Do you have anything else?
No, those were really the two main things that I had most concerns with.
So just so I understand, at this point, we're looking at site plan and VAR would come after any zoning appeals or variance.
Yes, except for the fact that there are landscaping and buffer guidelines that specifically would fall into place that would deal with the site plan involved.
Okay. And this isn't really a site plan question, but I was just curious, is this a rental property or is the idea that this would become is the current owner going to own the property and maintain it, or is the building going to be sold to somebody who would then rent out the units? What's the?
I know they're gonna be rental units. I don't think he has the intention of selling the property.
So they're
People
going to
the
be
property is an
rentals.
investment. Yeah.
Okay.
So owner operated.
Yes.
And then one more question, just in terms of the porch on the front of the building. And I mean, I recognize that the rest of Croton Avenue doesn't meet the form-based code in terms of sidewalk width. But if you didn't put the front porch on, would you be able to achieve the 8-foot sidewalk? As
Oh,
opposed
no,
to-
it's totally, I mean, I shouldn't say no, it is independent of, it wouldn't affect, if I have an input sidewalk, it will not affect. You
Right,
see
because
the-
you've got a
the
huge
green-
front yard, right? I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I guess that was kind of my question too. It's like you're asking for potentially a variance on the sidewalk width, but you've got this huge yard and it's just, I guess it's a little awkward to have the sidewalk on that section be
Right.
longer, but if the code is trying to move towards that
It
way.
actually looks like the sidewalk next door in front of 101 is wider than it is in front of 99.
That's the multifamily building.
Can we maybe share that image up on
Yeah.
here?
It's just Google Maps.
Yeah. Because it's like, if the form, if we're looking to widen the sidewalks, then this is exactly the opportunity to do that. One lot at a time, if that's the case. Somebody who occasionally runs by here would be great.
And I guess
I searched for it.
while we're looking at this, I mean, I guess this sort of, I think Valerie, maybe you raised this in your memo.
Title office, no.
There it is.
Yep.
Yeah. And go to,
Just in terms of the character of Croton Avenue, residential versus commercial, and the idea that I believe the NC zone should have ground floor commercial, so we have to provide a variance for that.
Oh, yeah.
no,
No.
the form-based code allows
Right,
Oh, that's
all
right.
residential.
That's right.
Right.
No,
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Or is that just,
Oh, yeah.
that looks like that on the other side as well? That's.
Yeah. So it certainly looks like your neighbor's sidewalk is
Okay,
wider.
so.
yeah, and just to clarify, I know that Valerie mentioned it before, but there's a number of things they require that
Yeah.
are waivers from requirements of the form-based code, which means they're waivers that the planning board can give. Under the form-based code, the planning board is authorized to waive things. But there's other things they need that aren't from the form-based code, but would require actual variances from the zoning board. Things like the width of the driveway, the width of the parking space. Those are just zoning code items that you cannot vary, that they would still need to go to the zoning board for.
Right, and Michael, we noticed we just noted the fact that, you know, the NC2 district is neighborhood businesses, because while the overlay does allow for all residential, it also allows for mixed use, and so it's just part of that discussion as the board considers, like any application that comes before you that wants to do all residential, is it appropriate for that particular site? You know, does it make sense in terms of the building, you know?
And that's, I'm sorry, but that's also the conversation I think that you were asking JV to expound upon, which is does this conform to the overlay district requirements, right? Like, we need to see more evidence of that, because if it's not, then it doesn't qualify for residential as of right.
Okay.
So the form-based analysis, I think, is really kind of critical here for us to really understand clearly.
So
that it's-
There is a full form-based code.
Right, I think,
Astonishing.
Right, so they've gone through it. There are a number of items that they don't comply with. But again, you are authorized to waive some of those, and you have on some other.
right, but I think
Right.
I think the chairman's point is that this is an overlay zone, and it's not necessarily, it's meant to move Croton Avenue forward in a particular direction, both aesthetically as well as the built environment. And it's not just meant to, it's, you know, be a
way to get
situation,
more
right, a way to get, right, or a way to get, you know, what you're looking for, but not provide all the other elements.
And it's a little tricky, the form-based code, and I think we've learned this now with a couple of projects, was not designed for a conversion of an existing building. It was really,
Right.
you know, intended for your building from the ground up. This is how you build.
Right,
So, and that's why you end up with all these waivers. You're dealing with an existing building that's already not conforming and can't really conform to some of those requirements.
which then raises the question of
Whether
whether it should be applied, right,
Right.
But I also think that you should look at things like the sidewalk. Well, they can comply.
right.
So should you give a waiver for that?
Right.
So I think that's part of it too, is when you look at these waivers, does it really need to have a waiver? Or
Yeah.
can we make it comply with the form-based code requirement?
And I think that's also part of your homework is, you know, in your narrative is, Eric, well, you know, these are the areas where you can clearly comply. This is how, this is where we're asking for a waiver, and this is why. So we as a board can evaluate whether or not we really agree with that, and whether this really is a, you know, matching with the form base. If it's a bunch of waivers, you know, then we have to really think very hard about whether or not this is appropriate.
Part of the application, if it makes it easier to, on the zoning worksheet, we divided the everything. No, I'm saying,
Yeah.
I understand the need for an error, but
Yeah.
to clarify, we have the variances, they are part of the code and part of the overlay.
Right, and that, which is a separate part of it, which is distinguishing between just the, you know, the normal, you know, ZBA process that would have to happen regardless. I mean, there's variances that could potentially fall into two different categories. Well, really three categories, right? There's the, you know, the straight up ZBA, we don't have any jurisdiction to waive them. There are those which we maybe decide to waive, and then there are those which we're allowed to waive, but we don't feel comfortable waiving, would have to go back to the zoning board. So I think that still remains to be sussed out.
And some of the true variances, if you will, that are not the form-based code requirements.
Right.
Actually result from existing non-conforming. conditions.
Are any of those variances the result of the addition in the back? Are they all existing non-conforming?
We have a rear yard.
Well, you're having to
Well-
add parking, so, and some of it's for like the width of the parking space. That's now a required parking space.
The rear yard.
Well, all the pre-existing non-conforming conditions they're not seeking variances for those. They're seeking variances.
For the new?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, that we'll work our way through that as we get a clearer picture of what may be waived, what isn't, and we'll forward that on, I think, as we get more clarity to the zoning board, if we feel it's appropriate.
The plan was asking for it all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, because Joe put them in his referral that even if they're existing.
Well, right.
But the
because what he's
question is,
asking
you're
for-
changing the use.
And they're changing the zone,
Yeah.
because they're putting an overlay to it.
Right, they're
too,
changing the
so-
use, they're changing the zoning, they're changing the intensity of the use in terms of the parking and the use of the driveway. So even though the driveway is an existing non-conforming, you're changing how it's being used.
And does that directive come from the building inspector?
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and they could theoretically, alter the size of the driveway by changing the size, you know what I mean? Like they
Configuration
could,
of the house.
right,
Right. But right now, everything's, the house is being cantilevered out over the existing
Yeah.
driveway. But you are introducing a new pillar, right, and that,
Yeah.
which impacts the circulation in the driveway, so you are making intervention in the existing driveway. You are.
There is an assistant parking space, yeah.
Okay, we should open a public hearing, on this, application while we're here tonight, and I have a motion to do so.
All right, so I'm gonna make the motion to open the public hearing.
Carnegie, a second motion.
Any objections? No objections, motion carries. Is there anybody in this room tonight to speak to this application? Don't see any hands, and any of the attendees here to speak to this application on Zoom? There are none. Can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing on this?
Michael Aaron's motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Carnegie, a second motion.
All right, any objections? No objections. The public hearing is adjourned. Before we send the applicant off to get back to us, are there any other board questions or comments that you'd like to see before we get back? I think we'll have some time to marinate in this, and there's a lot that needs to come back before we can really dig into the site plan stuff. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn the agenda item?
All right, so I'm gonna make the motion to adjourn this agenda item.
Carnegie, a second motion.
Any objections? No objections. Motion carries. All right, so you guys are good for this evening. Thank you, JB. Okay. Let's keep moving forward now. We're up to VAR 12/2023. This is 29 Caleb Avenue. And this is a VAR application for a conversion of an open terrace and closing it and turning it into a new kitchen. So you can come up, introduce yourself, and then we can maybe pull the drawings up as they go through their presentation. So there are drawings here. I'm assuming these are the same drawings that we had online, which are great for the group here, but if we can have the same drawings up online for the folks watching on Zoom at home.
My name is Joel Greenberg from Architectural Visions. I'm the architect for the project. And as the chairman said, what we're doing basically, if you look at the drawing either here or on the screen, and the upper section there, there is a covered terrace. And basically we're enclosing that terrace with 3 walls to create a new kitchen and enlarge the living dining area by moving the kitchen out to the existing terrace. So basically the roof is there. We're not changing that roof at all. So we're basically adding 3 walls.
Right.
And you have the elevation, everything just, oh, there is some pictures showing you exactly what you see. Yeah, that's it.
Were the elevations on the drawing?
Yeah, it's all on one side.
Yeah,
There's,
If you go back to the plan and you can scroll down. It should be on.
there we go.
and the only thing we're doing to the roof, as you can see in the elevations, we're adding a skylight on either side of the gate.
Okay,
I'm sorry, is there a door to? A door that's, I can't read, the right side elevation. So is that door new or?
No,
That's a new door that goes into.
that's part of the wall.
From the drive.
Okay, so there will be access to the yard through that.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
The roof line stays the same.
Yes. Don't touch that wall.
and as far as materials, the siding, the
Siding.
roofing, everything is what we saw in those photographs. Paint color, everything matches existing. And I know you have a window spec there, the window color.
The window color, if you go back to the pictures of the. Keep going. Basically, it's white. You can see from the, yeah, there's some existing side of the house.
So it'll match the existing windows there. And I was gonna ask about the gutters but this is the existing roof line. You're not making any change to the drainage there. The gutters will read exactly as we're seeing them here. Okay. Questions from the board?
That's what's going to be enclosed
Yes, that's
between
correct. Yes,
all the columns in the building.
right. That will be closed.
I mean, I think this one looks pretty straightforward. Can we have a motion to open a public hearing?
Michael Aronson, motion to open a public hearing.
Maria second.
Any objections? No objections, motion carries. We are now in a public hearing. Is there anybody here in this room tonight to speak to this application? I do not see any hands, and I'm looking in the attendees list on Zoom. Use the hand raise function if you'd like to speak. I do not see anybody raising their hand. I have a motion to close the public hearing on this matter.
Eric Talbot, I make the motion to close the public hearing.
Maria second.
Any objections? No objections. Public hearing is closed. Okay, I think this looks straightforward. I'm just going to go to staff real quick. Are there any questions that we didn't ask or that conditions that we should be looking out for?
I did not have any.
Okay. And no, there were no required variances or anything like this. This is just kind of all out of right. So I guess with that, can I have a motion from the board to approve the application?
Michael Aronson, motion to approve the application.
Cardelia, second the motion.
And we will do a roll call.
Michael Aronson,
Aye.
Eric Talbot,
Aye.
Carla Elliott,
Aye.
Bill Maria,
Aye.
Chair Roy.
Excellent. Motion carries. Motion is the application is approved, excuse me. Very good. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks very much, and
All right.
have a wonderful quarter.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good. Okay, so we're gonna move on now to our final little new application of the evening. This is gonna be it's a planning board PB 12/2023, 9 Brook Place. And this is a applicant is seeking a wetlands permit. And then Valerie, if you can give us just the overview, and then we'll let the applicant kind of give us their presentation.
Sure, this application is before you. It was, the village moved forward with putting this application on the agenda prior to like a fully complete application because of the current conditions of the site to move things along. This applicant did appear before the EAC for a recommendation for the wetlands permit, but needs to return to the EAC once they have a better sense of their mitigation plan. And the applicant, Jan Johansson, who's the village's wetlands consultant, did provide the applicant a list of 10 different items that were still needed. The applicant did provide some new plans a few days ago, and Jan needs to review those and provide a memo. And I believe there are still some outstanding information that's requested. And Tony talked to Jan today.
Yeah, but he was looking for the mitigation, the wetland delineation. The other stuff is little plan stuff. Those are the big things, getting the mitigation done, some of the road controls, details,
Okay,
walls, we need, structural walls need to be designed by a structural engineer.
so really, and I'll let the applicant speak in a moment, but I think our role for this evening is just to understand what the confines of the project are, and then we really need to hold tight and wait till we have the feedback from the professionals for reviewing the project.
Right, and then any questions that you have, you know what I mean, you can ask the applicant today, or if there's any other, clearly there's technical information, but if there's other information in addition to that, please feel free to ask those questions.
And really, the only permit that's up in front of us right now is the wetlands permit.
That's correct. So,
Okay, very good. So the applicant is here.
Excuse me, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Stephen Walton. I'm the contractor to do the mediation and constructing the retaining walls. I understand there was a glitch with the submission getting it late, and Jan didn't have a chance to review that. My question is there any chance that we could get some kind of a conditional approval subject to Jan's approval of the conditions, or do we need to wait another month?
Yeah, with the information we have right now, we are not able to act or issue any conditional approvals.
Okay, not even a conditional subject to his approval.
We
Because
cannot.
I think that everything lies in Jan's hands at this stage of the game, correct?
There's, I think, it's, you can remind me, Valerie, but I believe we're waiting for the feedback from the wetlands consultant. We're also waiting for the EAC. So there's, which we can't act without the EAC's recommendation. So there are limits to what we can do. I think right now, this is a understanding what the issues are and getting any preliminary feedback from this board, so that you can come back to us and with a completed project.
Right, and I think, Tony, you took a quick look at the documents today and it's still missing a mitigation plan.
Yeah, I didn't see the mitigation on the plans.
What were you looking
The
for?
wetland
Mitigation. So that's something that's really important that needs
Yeah.
to be part of the application.
And once those plans come, he's probably gonna come to me for engineering as well, to review it on the engineering side, but once we have more of the details.
Right.
The mitigation's big, getting the wetland done, delineated, that's one of the big ones as well.
Okay,
We have to know exactly where that line is.
very good.
So maybe we can put their site plan up on the,
I think one of the things that I just wanted to draw the attention, so, you know, the applicant is not proposing just to replace the wall in kind, and that's really the issue. They're planning to provide some, put in some additional retaining walls and also regrade some of their backyard, which is fine, but that's really the reason why a lot of this is being triggered at this.
My name is Dustin Wheeler. I'm the property owner. When we bought the house a few years ago, we knew that the retaining wall was in not great shape. Didn't realize quite how bad it was. And so when the house was built, they put in the retaining wall before building the house, pressure treated wood that's now rotted. And so in an attempt to not run into the same problem 20 years from now, we're go the right way. And make sure that this will be stable for the life of the house rather than, you know, my ownership of the property.
understood.
And so we're trying to do everything we can to make sure that this isn't, you know, a major regrade of the entire property, but just make sure the walls get in correctly and that slope stays stable and out of the creek. I mean,
Yeah.
as much as I don't want my house in the creek, you know, nobody wants all that whole slope in the creek either, so.
Sure. So I guess, yeah, we can maybe sit on this plan right here. So this is the proposed grading and site plan.
Yeah,
This is the new one that came in right on Friday.
this is
Yeah.
slightly amended with a little more.
Yeah,
The one on the agenda, though, correct? So, all right, so
Yeah.
this was.
Is there an updated one here that you would rather look at? Right now, we're looking at whatever was in the initial application.
I thought that was the update.
There's a wetlands and soils map on six.
So that's the actual wetlands map that was done by the surveyor last week.
Yeah.
No, that
this
was
is
done by
new
Paul
stuff.
Janik, the wetlands consultant.
Yeah.
That's his wetland survey.
And
Okay.
these will be the things y'all take a look at.
Okay.
Okay, so this was received by us only a few days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was done, that's complete as far as I know. I know you didn't see that, right?
Yeah, I didn't get it.
Okay,
All right, and then,
I think everything's been addressed, other than some technical issues on the plan.
let's just go back to the site plan, 'cause I just, for the public and for the board, just kind of understanding what this project is. You know, we have a slope and, you know, we understand that there's, you know, the existing railroad tie wall that's, yes, you know.
There was no drainage behind the wall at all.
And so those two gray lines are the two new masonry
Right.
walls that you're proposing. So the existing wood wall, though, is.
So
up at
there's
the top.
actually a pair of wood walls. The
There's another one
bottom
down
is-
lower,
The bottom one.
but it's so
about 3 feet
disintegrated,
and
yeah.
it's Buried by, by.
And these new walls.
Okay.
These new walls are the ready rock, the dry stack walls. They're not, there's no cement mixing or anything going on of that sort near the stream.
So yeah, the existing wall is the top edge of the red is essentially the border of the existing wall.
Right.
And so the new wall is gonna sandwich in against that
Right.
existing wall.
The backyard came out about, I think it's about 7 or 8 feet from the existing retaining wall there.
And where's the edge of the, is it a wetland buffer or is it the wetlands itself?
The wetland, we're in the wetland buffer. We're in the buffer zone. As I go through the map, I can,
Yeah, I mean, is there a line on there that delineates where the wetland buffer is? Is it the blue dotted line? No.
Yeah, I think there was a different, is there another, I think this was the wetland, the stream is all the way down here.
There, yeah, we can see the brook.
Yeah, the brook is
And I
down
know
here.
that the
Yeah.
wetland survey report gave wetlands.
Initially, all of this was built in the buffer anyway. Both these walls and the back of the house were in the buffer zone.
They're both in the buffer zone, so.
It's been there, so.
Yeah, no, understood. We're talking here about a wetlands approval, so I think it's just understanding where we're working, what we're doing. And so you're regrading at the top of the wall, between the walls, and then.
Well, this is the existing wall here. This wall will be at the same elevation as this existing wall.
Yeah.
Then there's a 12-foot to a 10-foot space, and then it's dropped down another 10 feet. The 20-foot is a 20-foot lift in the yard. And to put one wall on a 20-foot slope, it doesn't give you enough stability. So I don't think there's any other way to do it except put two walls. Unless you went down to the bottom and put one 20-foot wall up.
Can you
Which
just, I'm sorry,
aesthetically speaking, would not be.
can you just explain the difference between the darker pink and the lighter pink and what that represents on there? Just 'cause I-
This is basically the work zone here, and this is your buffer zone.
Are the different shades, the degree of the slope?
I think so. I think that's what it is. There's probably, I don't know if there's a legend.
I think there should be another, maybe
It's
there's another,
probably like 75, 25% maybe.
what, the slope?
Yeah, I'm just wondering like the different categories of
Well, 20 feet in elevation,
Yeah.
just gets us.
There's the legend,
35% greater.
Yeah,
it's the slopes.
Right, so it's the darker, the steeper.
Yeah.
There is a section, I think there's a couple of sections there, which we maybe can just take a quick look at as well. Through the hill, that's above, same drawing, so just to the prior sheet, I believe is where I saw it. Yeah. So that actually that shows you in section the existing and proposed grade from this.
right, exactly, yeah.
Like I said, the other concern is the walls are 8, 10 feet each way, and the footings would, the dimensions, these are gonna have to be designed by, structural engineer.
What's that,
The walls itself, the footings,
well, Ready Rock has it, they have in state approval on it. You're saying they need an individual design now?
well, it's usually something we only push for a licensed structural engineer to design the walls, especially that height, especially over 4 feet. I think we're greater than 4 feet, especially on the slope as well. Like the details don't have the footing, the width of the footing.
Yeah, the footing the block is 60 inches, the footing 7 feet wide, and that's what's required. These are all pre-approved walls. I can give you all kinds of engineering on it.
Yeah, usually that's,
Usually get that on the
They
plan.
use throughout the entire country, these walls, and they're very effective. Minimal disturbance, you go in for the gravel bed and set the block and go.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, sure.
Is the wetland buffer, this is not specifically to use, sir, but, is the wetland buffer 50 feet, is 50 feet from the center of this water course, correct? Because it's not an actual, I live on this creek, so I know this area.
Yeah.
And I guess, the other question I want to ask, this is something you can answer, you may, of course, you will know this, have an idea. What are the existing heights of the retaining walls that you currently have, or the one that you replaced?
So the bottom one is above the ground only about 2 to 3 feet.
But the one that you're,
Like
the one that you're
one
most-
that's really worrisome is anywhere from about 4 feet above the slope to obviously 7 feet
Yeah.
above the slope at the corner.
Yeah, I guess my concern looking at that is how close you are to the water course and how high the walls are, and wondering about knowing that this actual water course, while it's not on the flood maps, during really heavy rain events, it does go up a lot, and the water does move through, at a rapid pace.
Mm.
So my concern would be is the integrity of the wall going to be protected?
So none of the walls are anywhere close to the banks of the brook and
Have you seen the high water line? Do you know how high it comes up from the highest? Does it
Um,
come anywhere?
Yeah,
I've lived there for 3 years now, and that's my length of experience on it. I have never noticed it.
I'm not
flooding over the.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about the top wall so much, although that is a high wall. It would be that wall below it,
Yeah.
That was the current condition.
So
Can you go back to the original page's submission was an existing survey? And that pretty much delineates where the brook is and what the elevation build is starting in the wall. There it is right there,
So the wetland report also mentions that the bank of the brook
Yeah.
itself has a I don't know the term for it, but loose stone retaining wall up against it.
This is three base here,
Yes.
and I think elevation,
Yeah, they're
I
both.
think we're 378 at the bottom of the first wall, which is approximately 4 feet higher than the actual stream bed. There's 4 feet elevation change from the high water mark of the stream to the bottom of the first wall.
Thanks.
And then I mean, it sounds like the mitigation, because, again, just to refocus this, where we are as a board, looking at this project, it's wetland. And so there's a lot of information that we really need from the wetlands consultant to understand, to make sure that this project complies and is appropriate from that perspective, along with the EAC recommendations. Wetlands permit is a public hearing. Okay.
That's a
I know
good
this is
question.
all-
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that before I open up the public hearing here tonight. So can I have a motion from the board to open the public hearing on this application?
Eric Talbot, I make a motion to open the public hearing.
Michael Aronson, second the motion.
Any objections? No objections, the motion carries. Do we have anybody in the room tonight to speak to the application? do see
I got a
one.
letter. I might be the only one in the neighborhood.
No, you can come on up and just introduce yourself and just, it's just your name, your place of residence, and you can speak to the application.
Dan O'Neill, I'm at 12 Gates Avenue. I've been there 40 years. That little stream can't get higher than 4 feet. I've seen it. Floyd managed to do that, but that was the only time. You mentioned it should be 2 walls, and you're right. You're not gonna put 1 wall up next to it. I was back there when they built it. How long's that been there? 20 years?
2006, I think is the build date on the house, so maybe the wall went in 2005.
So you knew when you looked at it. I did anyway.
Mhm.
It was gonna last as long as it needed to, but you're gonna have to replace it.
I wish the original wall had been built then.
So I don't think anybody in the neighborhood would object to what you're doing. That makes sense. And what you're doing is making sense too. So I have no objection to it. I doubt anybody. in the neighborhood makes that sense.
Very good.
Why did I get that letter?
We're gonna send it to everybody within a certain radius. Everyone else showed them.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. Sure. Is there anybody else? I was just gonna check online to see if there's any attendees with their hands up. I do not see any. So I think based on where we are here right now, can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing on this application?
Motion to adjourn public hearing.
Second.
Eric Talbot, I make a second motion.
All right, so the motion carries, and the public hearing is adjourned. And I think you guys have your instructions, so we can, we're gonna get the.
We need to satisfy Keller with the mitigation. Are you happy before you see? Yeah.
No, that's gonna have to all be reviewed by,
Okay.
all the wetland mitigation, the
Okay.
delineation, the reports, you've gotta sign off on that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I can't speak on that. Yeah.
And other than that, what else do we need to obtain a permit?
That's not, you talking about building permit?
Yeah, no, I know, we have the applicant, no, I'm saying.
Sorry,
you-
what else do we have to do to get the wetlands permit? Because that's.
Right, you get
You
it.
have to satisfy the comments. Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
All
My
right,
only
yeah,
question,
go ahead.
obviously, we're not bidding now, but, does this require us waiting the full month for the next meeting
Yes,
before we can do any work?
yes.
I would highly recommend getting that mitigation plan together.
But we still have to wait a month now. If you look at some of those pictures there, it's serious.
Yeah, this board meets once a month. Okay, that's how that works. All right, so can I have a motion then from the board to adjourn the application to next month?
Michael Aronson, motion to adjourn the application the next month.
That'll be a second motion.
Any objections? No objections. All right, so hopefully we can get this all wrapped up. All right, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
Already. Okay, very good. We will move on now. The next item on the agenda is planning board 08/2023 and DAR 07/2023. This is 196 North Highland Avenue. And we've been here before, maybe again, maybe Valerie, I don't know if you can just give us a quick, what's changed since our last meeting?
So since the last meeting, we did circulate all the notices to the involved and interested agencies. We did hear, you did receive a county response on May 8th. And we also provided you a part two EAF form. So the if this, I'm sorry, excuse me, that's the wrong project. We are still, we've identified a couple other things that we just want to follow up on in dealing with SHPO. And so we're just going to submit the information if you haven't already. Specifically, it was identified as a potential archaeological site.
No, we haven't.
Okay, so we'll just submit it to SHPO, that should probably be taken care of next month. And we did submit the information to New York State Department of Transportation, but we haven't heard anything from them. Have you heard anything from them? So we'll follow up with them and the fire department, because those are the two specific agencies that we think we should have some sort of response from. So in the next month, we'll be following up with SHPO, New York State Department of Transportation, and the fire department. And then hopefully we'll have a part two and part three for the board's consideration the next month.
Okay, and I know that last meeting or the prior, we declared our intent to be lead agency. Do we still need to declare lead agency on this?
You can declare lead agency tonight.
Okay, because all the notifications have been out
Yes,
there for a long time.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so with that in mind, I know that there's some new drawings. We can get those up on the board, and JB, you can just quickly walk us through what's new in the submission site plan and VAR both.
Very much, we've been trying to address some of the issues that the consultants had. There is not much difference here for the board to discuss tonight. I wanted to point out that we will have for the next time around, in other words, we did create three-dimensional drawings from each side with a house and the adjacent building. We should haven't been able to submit those for this meeting, so we should be able to have those next week. We started working on a logistics plan, trying to figure out how the site will work during construction. And if from the ARB we started dealing with the side, then I guess it will look. And that one, it will be the next elevation, where we started to see if we can add a dormer in the center, change the massing of the roof, and to add two more windows on each side to kind of break a little bit, even though it's behind the building, to kind of help with that. And again, here comes of the ones we have the 3D showing the houses, the retaining walls, all that together. In that those didn't print out well. We're trying to show the shade became a little bit darker.
Okay, I was going to ask that we really don't know what's happening there.
Yeah.
And that was one of our comments. If we actually go back to that prior drawings real quick. I know, when we were here last week, we had a lot of public commentary and kind of concerns about retaining walls, screening, how this gets divided off from the neighbors. So I know that that elevation kind of gets cut off, but there's a further retaining wall right there, right? And it's big.
And we do have like I said, a 3D in the section that shows the relationship of the wall to the building and the house in the back and the house to the side.
Okay, and I know that, on the site plan that was up there before, there was, I think, there was some sort of a landscape plan, though. Yeah, and it was there, I think, right, on that site plan, a couple issues, and some of this was in Valerie's memo, but, and kind of looking at neighborhood photos, it looks like one kind of tree that's kind of everywhere, kind of tightly packed. It seems like someone took, went to CAD and just dropped a bunch of trees in there. I think kind of really understanding how that landscaping works, what species they are, what kind of diversity of species you have in there, and not make it look. I mean, there are some, in that neighborhood I was driving by, there are other planters, plantings that look like just like arborvitae, just like little like sandcastle arborvitae. I don't know how much screening that's going to provide, if that's really going to be sufficient. And I think this has come up in this meeting before, too, in this group before, you know, they're disease prone, one dies, they all die, and now you're kind of SOL. So we need, I think really a lot of more thought and detail put into that, to that component of this project.
Okay.
I think also in Valerie's memo is just kind of really understanding the trash removal. I know that seems, I think, whereas the trash removal on this plan is, and you know, it's accessible. So, you know, to a trash removal truck, right? I mean, that's underneath the main volume of the building and the sub, whatever, in that parking lot. So, you know, these are just kind of basic site plan issues as we work our way through the secret process as well, that in fact how we go with this. So there's kind of my thoughts on where we are, you know, board comments and thoughts.
We're focusing solely on site plan, or we're doing VAR, or I know we have to wait for your, but
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think it's open right now. I think there's been some movement and some new plans, so I think.
I did have a sort of a VAR question, and I think it's just from, can we go down? I'll tell you when to stop. I think it's that, maybe go back. It's the elevation. Yes, I think it's right above this. Yeah, so I'm just this one right here. I'm a little confused, the bottom part of the drawing. So those are the cornices that are facing on the north side of the building, if I'm correct. And if I'm looking at that, those are just cornices. There's no, that's not a roof line with structure behind it. Is that what I'm seeing? So when you go up a little further to this, so there, that's what.
Yeah, those are.
But is, so I guess the large one in the middle, what, yeah, I'm confused between the two drawings, what I'm really seeing there.
Oh, yes, okay, that is a depiction at an angle. Okay.
It's,
Is it 2D? Is that just like a faux
Yeah.
pediment
yeah,
kind of thing?
that's what I want.
Like a faux gable or, yeah,
That's the intention to,
like stage set type.
Yeah.
I think the 3D renderings, yeah, I know we don't have those, so it'll be helpful to see that, to really understand this, because I know this is an oddly shaped site.
and when you look at the pictures, and I guess A14 of the neighborhood study, you see in the right bottom, I mean, we will work on changing, but I think the intention there, I don't know if, you know, how the board feels that works well on that. The intention there was to provide a buffer, a visual buffer to the neighbors behind it. Therefore, the proximity of the arborvitae, we can definitely, and we have, as you know, heard that before from the tree consultant, we can change some of the arborvitae so to avoid any disease. I think I don't know once, but that's the idea basically that we're trying to do in the rear, to provide the privacy to the neighbor.
I mean, honestly, if you look at these photos, right, you see trees and tree canopies, and where there are tree canopies, you can't see anything behind them.
No.
You see the one row of arborvitae, and it's just like you can see everything. So I think these are very telling. I think we really need to see more of the trees and less of just.
Okay.
And that retaining wall, the retaining wall on your site has not yet been built, but would be similar to that. Is that correct? In
Yes.
terms of height and.
Yeah.
But one other question that I think was raised in one of the memos, and this is. Again, the sort of the commercial space on the ground floor is a little more than 500 square feet. Has there been given any further thought to maybe, I mean, what kind of use is being envisioned going in that commercial space, and would it make sense to perhaps enlarge it a little bit?
Well, that was, if the intention was to be an office space. To be an
Yeah, office space?
Yeah.
That's the rear of the two spaces.
No.
Oh, no, I think
front and
it's the street frontage, right? So,
That's the only space that they're proposing to have non-residential.
Right, which is something else. I mean, again, so this comes back to SECR, and we're looking at kind of conformance with the, you know, with the build plan and what this district should be doing. And having prominent kind of commercial use at ground level. And kind of how this building is, I mean, this is certainly, this is one of the big comments that came up last week. So, you know, I want this, you know, I feel like there should be, I don't know, I don't know, more thought with how that public portion of the building sits there
It
and
is.
engages. And the entrance to that, so there's not even an entrance off the sidewalk, right? You have to go up into the, like, kind of under and into this garage to get into that space.
Yes.
So,
So if I decided this is a great location for me to, you know, open up some sort of, you're saying office right now, but say, you know, we've seen applications, someone,
Well, originally it was a bakery.
right?
right,
Yeah.
it was a larger, used up a larger footprint than the 500.
No,
Not
no,
much,
no.
but I think it did have an entrance on Highland.
We'll review that. I don't think so, but I will.
Was there a difference in the parking requirements for bakery versus
No.
office?
No,
Is there a reason why this doesn't engage with the sidewalk and you have to go underneath this dark garage to get into this space?
because mostly you're not gonna have that much traffic from the sidewalk. It's gonna be people coming from the parking space. That was the idea. We can discuss with the owner if a door there, I don't think putting a door there will.
I mean,
He'd be opposed to it.
Is there a parking lot for the karate place next door? Do they have their parking in the back?
They have it on the side.
They have it on the side and then people walk around to the front, right? I don't know, it just seems
Yeah.
like that's,
I thought you had an entrance on the site plan coming in from sidewalk. On the site plan. Instead of people walking into the garage, isn't there another entrance in the front? Could be wrong, yes, the sidewalk.
Where is it?
there's
Oh,
a,
because the garage,
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems to me to be a, whatever the commercial use is, to invite the public in, if you will, would be nice to have an entrance on, you know, the main thoroughfare.
Just keep in mind that this project would not, the only reason this project is conforming in terms of uses is because of that 557 square feet.
Well, in terms of the residentials, this is what's making it a conforming use. Okay.
But it's
Yeah.
also, there is nothing on the code that says that, I mean, that there is a limit to them. I mean, I understand the balance and we need to study for it, but
and we're looking at the environmental impact and we're looking at how this project would work with what the
Well,
village's goals are,
yeah,
right?
well,
That's
yeah.
part of our mandate here.
and next to the residential building there now is using I believe it's a daycare center. So there is a mix in that area of having recess, a small business. You have houses as well. What I'm saying is like, when you talk about the environmental impact or the neighborhood, I mean, there is not the front residential use in this area.
The other residential uses are single family homes that are set back.
Jason, the Jason one, I'm not sure.
I think most of them are single family set up from the road or back from the road. I could be wrong.
But I don't,
Except for that.
I don't think we're saying that there's a problem with having, you know, having your home over your shop, right? Having residential above but it's just residential above what, you know, residential above. Right, I mean, like that's, I think that's been a line of thought and comment since this was first presented to us. And that hasn't changed at all, other than a storage space, you know, was clarified as a storage space, right? That it just hasn't changed and it's this, you know.
But if the building owner wants to, I should, again, I'm trying to understand if the building owner wants to use this as his office. And that's the, you know,
I guess my comment would be, it's just that how does that commercial space relate to the street, no matter how it's being used? And I mean,
Okay.
if there's an entrance, you know, that's pretty common, and then you're wondering why isn't there an entrance there? Like, is there something, is it like someplace like that we just don't want to pop into because it's not for everybody? You know, it does kind of like make you kind of scratch your head, like, what's going on in there, you know?
okay,
But that's, you know, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I got confused too. I thought that was a garage door, the person saying. That's
Yeah.
why I asked, I said,
Right.
wait a second, there's a walkway going up to it.
Right, it's in, yeah, and so where is the garage? Now I am confused, 'cause where's the?
Yeah, because I thought that was the garage door because with the line.
There's an overhang.
So the
parking.
parking lot, the garage is just over on the side. and-
Yeah,
and
you
around.
over there. That's where I got confused,
Yeah.
sorry.
But I think that if the drawing is confusing,
Yeah,
the whole, then this is confusing, and it's not, I don't think this is just an issue of representation. I think that there's an issue with the project that needs to be resolved here.
the other thing is the layout too of how the parking is below. If you look at the architectural plans, it looks like the spaces are close. If you scroll, that was one of my confusions as well. You go to the architect's plan. See how the spaces right there, you have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're all within the building.
Yeah.
And then there's one outside of the island.
Mhm.
Mhm.
At
If you
the
go to
end.
the architect plan, looks like the spaces are close to the wall. It's one of our notes in our comments. So if you scroll to the architect layout.
What is that?
Alright, it was so.
Scroll down,
The A drawings.
keep going. Keep going. Yeah, now look at the space there. It's touching the wall. Scroll down a
No,
little. bit. See that?
that's a protection. No, it's not against.
No, this is where I was getting confused. This space is almost touching where that entrance comes in.
Mhm.
And then they're all moved down, but if you look at site plan, it looks like the spaces are all.
Excuse me.
Are you saying that's a drive area from the street is?
It's a walk.
That's the walking area that was.
That's where you enter though, right there, right here. Right here is where you enter.
Yep.
See how close that space is to that wall? If you go to the site plan, there's a big island there.
Okay.
So that's what it's kind of,
Inconsistencies between the
Yeah.
plans.
because I didn't know how to comment whether you're not giving enough space to,
All right.
look at.
I think we've been able to outline our kind of concerns and questions.
I had one more.
Yeah.
Last meeting, you had concerns with the overhang.
Yeah.
And they did not change anything on the overhang.
So we go back to that elevation. I think we really need to see the 3D drawing on this. 'Cause this one I do think may be representational. 'Cause I think we had this conversation, I think every meeting, so far. It was actually, go up, Maddie, just to one more. Yeah, it's that one, but it's really, I think the street facing one, right? It's that little jog there on the side.
Right.
Which is, because there's a canted wall, a straight wall, and then there's a driveway around the edge. So I think understanding that better in 3 dimensions, this is I realize it's kind of a diagonal canted site, and so if we can see that better. I'm still not totally understanding why it needs to be that way, and why that wall can't extend out a little further unless it gets into the way of the driveway. In which case, why is it's.
Might have a lane issue there, right? If you push that wall out, you're reducing your back up 24 feet lane.
But it-
Oh, to the front wall. I
Yeah.
can take a look into that. I mean, I don't.
or if there would be any other way to connect that upper volume with that lower volume, which I realize is just, it's another flat wall, right? You got a lot of these like non-volume containing walls on this
Yeah.
building. All right. I think we should reopen the public hearing on this. See if there's anybody here to speak. We have a motion for that.
Eric, how would I make a motion to reopen the public hearing in this application?
Ray, a second.
Any objections? No objections or public hearings, or anybody here to speak to this application in the room? And I don't see any hands. If you're on Zoom, you can use the hand raise function. And I do not see any hands. Right, can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
Michael Aronson, motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Carly, second the motion.
Okay, no objections, any objections, no objections, motion carries. All right, so is there anything else that I feel like we've gone through the list. There's no other questions from staff. Then I have a motion to adjourn this agenda item to our next meeting.
Eric Talbot, I make the motion to adjourn this agenda item to the next meeting.
And a second,
Ray, second.
any objections? No objections, motion carries. All right, so we'll see you next time with some of these comments. All right. Then we can take a little bit deeper into the secret process.
Don't go too far.
Okay, so we're now gonna go to, you have to sit down first and then. we can
Spin around a little bit.
All right, board 07/2023 BAR 03/2023. This is 14 Church Street. This is a site plan, conditional use, BAR, and there's a parking waiver request in service of a third floor addition. So if we can start off.
Excuse myself.
Yes, so we do have one, that, sorry, it's one refusal, so we are still with a quorum. Okay, and actually Valerie, if you can just give us the summary of where we stand with this one.
I think for the most part, the site plan issues are pretty much taken care of. I think it's now down to BAR. In terms of seeker, you are able to adopt an A deck. This is the one that I provided you a part 2 and part 3 last month.
All right, so if you can walk us through the changes that you incorporated into the projects.
Oh, and I'm sorry, one other thing, the LW, I mean, the EAC did review this for LWRP
Yeah.
consistency, and they did find it consistent.
Right, and I think that letter was issued yesterday or
Yes.
today, yeah, and that was sent to all of us.
Yes.
Well, this like the one before, well, we did work mostly on the site plan. We would like to move that forward. We also created 3D renderings that will help what we're trying to do with the building. If you go to the front elevation, the footing, again, just like the prior one, that it does require it does require 3D and some rendering in order to illustrate what we're trying to do.
Okay, so this is the revised elevation.
Yeah,
You don't have the 3D,
no,
Yeah.
that's going for the next.
that'll be for the next meeting, okay. So, I mean, we can start here, I guess, because these drawings are up. So I know we've talked a lot about materials and kind of appropriateness and how this looks and works next to its neighbors.
So we're bringing the material from the bottom to the top and we return from like in the top or like in the side, and then it goes back to the open material. To the stuff.
I think that sticking with the brick is, it's the first time I'm looking at it and it looks like a kind of a cohesive building. I wonder a little bit about the addition of the kind of classical cornice on top of a building that I think we can kind of discuss that as a board and kind of understand if we think that that's really the right solution to the top of the building needs some sort of a resolution. I'm not sure if that's it, but I think kind of the move that you made to kind of create these 3 separate bays and use the brick and kind of use the old coping as a demising line between the two. I think that this works really well.
And also we did adjacent to the building, we did return the building a little bit to create.
Return the brick.
Yes.
Yeah, how far?
In the shadow.
Yeah, that's
Oh, no, but I'm talking about it's
On
not
both sides.
visible in the front elevation against the, I guess, what is that, 12 building? The adjacent building?
the Lucy's.
Yeah, there is a, yeah. I was in the Melissa's building, that's. how I know.
We all know it is.
Yeah, so that little area there is like recessed about, I believe it's almost 2 feet. So it creates its own shadow and a separation from the other building.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I think seeing this in context with the renderings will help us. I think having some thoughts maybe for next time about maybe a more kind of style appropriate, building top. Is that was kind of my biggest takeaway. The only other thought that I had, going back to that elevation, like I said, I think it's so much more resolved, and I think you've made a lot of progress. Is there still like just like when you look at the window bays on the original building and then what you're adding, you kind of have it like, it's a weird shift, right? That none of those center lines match up, so I don't know. You gotta think that there's a way, they're so close, that there's a way to kind of restore some sort of symmetry and kind of I realize it's not, kind of structural logic where you have the bays between the windows line up. This looks a little.
And I did have an additional comment about the windows, and maybe again, it's just the drawing itself, and how I'm not sure how much the lintels over the window are, they flush with the facade, but I was wondering, on the side of the building, the detail over the windows, there's just a little bit of detail. It has that little sort of, I don't know how you describe the shape, but there's the lintel, and then there's a little sort of crown in the lintel. And I'm just wondering, I actually took a picture of it, but I'm just wondering if there couldn't be some, maybe continue that theme and the front facade from the side, even though you're using a different material, it's not stucco, it's brick, but maybe there could be just a little bit more detail or elaboration over the windows themselves, in addition to substance, which
I think that then even with the corners, we're trying to make a statement with the corners, maybe like I said, it's too contemporary, too classical, but I'm not sure that if we start introduce impediments over all the windows, and that we are moving away from what this building is. And while we have the Lucis building, which is very historical aspect, now we have a very contemporary building that was designed.
well, but the side of the building isn't really contemporary.
No, I'm saying with the,
We have photos, right?
Yeah, I'm just looking.
I mean, you are creating the way that the elevation reads, you're creating a shadow line, right? You're kind of
Yes.
creating a window box. So I'm assuming the window around the brick is
Maybe,
recessed
yeah.
and this is stepped out. So you are kind of creating that depth around the windows to accentuate them.
Maybe if I see the 3D.
is that,
Yeah,
I think
that
that's
there's
right.
a lot of information there.
It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but that was just
Okay,
my
we will
thought.
definitely look into that.
I have a question, maybe you could answer this. The front elevation, can you go back to that? Yeah, is there some structural reason why those two windows on the right, the three of them above each other, why those can't be lined up? And simply put a narrow window on the left?
That is something we can explore, but also have to do with the interior layout, so we may have to work with that as well.
The interior layout is determining where those windows are located.
Well, we're kind of working with both. So
I think you're this close, but
Yeah.
Are you, and this is a full brick that you're proposing?
No.
Standard brick, the thin brick?
Yeah.
It's not a brick base, right? It's not a stucco,
No,
it's a
no.
thin brick. So how are you gonna get that depth of the thin brick? Use corner bricks or?
Yeah, they come with this.
I see. So we're looking at photos of the existing building has like almost like a brownstone or cast stone.
If anybody wants to look at it. but-
Like flat art.
On the entrance or?
Oh,
I don't think I noticed. That's on the other side.
Oh,
There's that little detail over the window that,
So are you carrying that out on the new,
like
like
that.
as you can actually see it there. So is that going to be carried out on that wall at least? Because I think that would be a nice way of,
Okay.
whether that's like a cast stone or,
Really not that pixelated.
I mean, that's as soon as we get, yeah.
yeah,
That's it.
it's getting a little abstract now. Okay. Can we actually just look at that the new elevation on that wall? Because I don't even think that's reflected. I don't see that on this
Yeah.
elevation. And I'm assuming you're not changing the ones that are there.
yeah,
that's right.
well, it is there, you
Oh,
can't see
okay,
it
I see. No, he's showing them. Oh, and you are doing some sort of a
on the
lintel
bottom.
Right.
on
That's
the upper
existing, but
lintel.
on the upper, there's nothing going on there.
It is,
It looks like an aluminum.
yeah,
There's,
we were trying to bring the different material with the, kind of bring the cap and the roof, trying to bring everything together.
I think that I mean, for what it's worth, the kind of like terracotta color on the lower level is a little more pleasant to look at than that black and, you know, that I don't know if it's black or if it's dark bronze or what it is, but,
Oh, the brick we're trying to match.
no, not the brick. I'm looking at the side
Oh.
of the facade for a moment, you know, and kind of to Michael's point, some comments regarding how those windows are.
Oh, for the,
Are you changing the color of the stucco? Are you painting it then?
No, that's-
Are you gonna keep it the beige?
I think we should look at this on the renderings as well and kind of understand those, and kind of
Okay.
resolve where those issues are. And that railing, that palisade rail, that's just a transparent aluminum,
yes.
right? So that's just a drawing where we're not seeing there.
It's
That's
just
you see through it. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to site plan secrets. We do have some, you know, I think we've spent more time on those in the past. There's not much of a site plan as we discussed on this project because this project is the entire site, the intervention is the entire site. I think some questions that we've talked about in the past are just related to trash removal. And kind of how that can be facilitated. Can you kind of speak to that?
I'm sorry.
Trash removal was one of the sites.
Trash removals is, I think is shown on the drawings. There's gonna be a room in the back that is being used for storage now. That's where we're gonna keep the trash. And then there's gonna be, I think the next drawing shows. Not sure, but- Oh, it's still, like, doesn't look like the final drawing.
Right.
We do show, so somebody's gonna super walls, bring it outside. For collection.
Okay.
The EAC brought up the trash issue.
That it needed to be inside there.
That any additional waste receptacles.
Yeah, you see.
I think that note says where how he passes it there. Yeah, path of.
That's basically showing the hallway inside and there.
So it's an internal trash room. Is it like a trash chute or is it's just a room, people
No,
bring their
that's just a
garbage
room.
down there?
Yes,
And refuse will be collected there
Right.
and then brought out by staff.
because right now I guess they've been put in the bag, but they've been taking it through.
Okay, so
parking lot.
it'll be fully internal. The only
Yes.
time the trash goes outside is the day of collection.
Right.
Okay, and is this private collection or is this village collection?
That I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think that,
Typically, I think the village has, well, oh, for this one, it's in the VC. So
We're sort of moving away from the
Yeah.
dumpster program, so TBD.
TBD, okay.
we'll get back.
As far as site plan, if we're, you know, with our site plan review and approval would be concerned, that would be something that would be,
We'll have an answer for you next month to make sure that the proposed location will work with what.
okay.
The EAC brought up an issue about landscaping. I don't recall seeing any landscaping on the site plan, really.
it is.
So,
They asked about an island, if they wanted to know if there was some dying vegetation on an
Right.
island, like plants or trees on an island or bushes. And
Right.
they just wanted clarification, I guess, was it owned or maintained by that?
Do we know where that island is? Because
I
I think it's the village property.
it
right?
is attached picture.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not clear where they're,
there's no tree pits or anything on the sidewalk, right?
I think there is one there, but that's,
We just look at the photo real quick. I don't know if that's.
the one.
This guy here?
There's one tree.
Are there any empty tree pits? Like with no vet?
I was at that EAC meeting and I don't recall this
Okay.
discussion, so I don't
Yeah.
know if this was something. that they, when they were writing the letter, so we can follow up with them and because clearly it's gonna get adjourned again,
Yeah,
so I can follow up with them on that.
yeah, no, that's fine.
But
There
we
is that
have,
buffer to the west of that and the two Church Street parking lot, perhaps they're not thinking of that.
yeah, that's what I was wondering if they were looking at.
Right.
but is this something the board can vote on the site plan and then should have ARP for the next meeting?
So I think there's enough of a couple of these questions that we can you know, if we can get those answers for site plan. We can do site plan and ARB in the same meeting. That's something we do. I think what we can do tonight is, you know, if everyone's had a chance to review the part two, you know, that we've had now for some time to take a look at. I think as far as that goes on this project, I think that's pretty straightforward. Is maybe vote to, you know, if the board president, and I advise you, if you're okay with the vote tonight, there's only four voting board members here. So if anybody doesn't, you know, vote, even so much as abstains, then it wouldn't carry. So we can vote tonight on certainly, you know, on a negative declaration. I think we have that information, but I just caution you that, you know, waiting for a larger board is something you may prefer for us to do. So I guess well, I mean, before we take any votes or decide whether or not we want to take any votes tonight, I think I'll take a couple of steps here. As far as, you know, from a staff perspective on the negative declaration, I think we've been through that. Are there any questions or anything else that we should be asking the applicant before we move forward with that?
Not in relation to that.
Not in relation to secret on the negative
Yeah.
declaration. Okay. I think site plan, we've asked a couple of questions. I think most of it's resolved. I think it's worthwhile waiting on a couple of these relatively, you know, these smaller items and getting EAC clarification on that letter. I think EAC's letter was overall clear, but I just want to make sure that we're understanding it. We're not moving forward without that information. And then obviously, you know, BAR, I think that's the one area where we have a little bit more work to do. You know, can you speak for your applicant and decide that would you like for us to move forward with a negative declaration with this group?
Negative declaration.
Would be just related to SECRA, to the, you know,
Yeah.
to the, okay, knowing that if somebody decided that they weren't comfortable voting tonight, that it would.
Right, then we'll have site plan and the rest.
But how would that, I mean, if we had an abstention, then the negative, would there be another opportunity to have that vote, or how would that work?
Yeah, it just doesn't pass, so it would end up.
I just have to be honest, because I feel like I did not look at that item. So
You're not prepared to vote.
I'm not sure. I'm sure I would be comfortable with it, but in all honesty, I didn't review it. It was one of the items I didn't get to, so I'm not sure what's in it. If we could pull it up and I could read it quickly,
I don't know that it hurts them to.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't think it really, I mean, at this point, you're not gonna be able to get us.
You're not getting site plan approval
Right.
tonight,
Right.
so I don't think it hurts you to put it over.
And I can recirculate. I mean, I think it's on the
yeah, it's in
attachment.
the agenda.
Yeah.
packet. I just overlooked it and I
That's fine.
apologize. Because I didn't realize that was something that we.
No, it was probably on my list.
Look, I mean, there's.
I'll recirculate it again. too.
I'm fine with.
Okay, on a positive note, I think that this application has come a long way. I think that, you know, compared to what we saw, and I think it's not like we've been looking at this for months and months. I think this is maybe the third or fourth time we've looked at this. I think we're kind of right at the cusp of really resolving all of those questions. So I think we've come a long way. I think it's, you know, it's a evolved project. And I think, you know, if there's one box that we can't quite check off tonight, it wouldn't preclude us from doing that in the next meeting.
Okay.
I have one comment question. I just realized, first of all, I do agree with Chairman White. I think that this project looks significantly better and it was a substantial improvement from the last meeting. I just realized we're going to be looking at an east elevation from South Highland Avenue, seeing like what everybody from high school is going to see. Like when they're walking on that sidewalk, is it's going to be above Lucy's. Well, I haven't seen any pictures of what that's going to look like. And as far as I can imagine, it's just a blank wall in my head.
I agree. Eric, that's great.
Absolutely.
It just dawned on me.
Yeah, you know, we've been talking about renderings and I know you're working on that, but that specific view, I think we actually said that too.
Because I don't want to be later on, down like a couple of years from now, they're like, you got anything?
I didn't realize that was gonna be pink. I think it was pink, I guess it just, you know, wouldn't fit in, but I actually had that when I was I do alteration reviews in the city, and then the commercial tenant moved in and put in a two-story floor on this very buttoned up condo, and they were not happy about it. So, okay, but so really good point. I just procedurally, I don't believe we opened the public hearing, reopened the public hearing on this. I think we should. So is there a motion to reopen the public hearing on this application?
Michael Aronson. Michael Aronson, motion to reopen the public hearing.
Any objections? No objections. Is there anybody here in the room to speak to this application this evening? I don't see any hands in the room. Is there anybody on Zoom? To the attendees? No, I don't see it. You can use the hand raise function. I don't see any hands up. So can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing on this application?
Motion to adjourn.
Right, Talbot, I second the motion.
Any objections? No objections. The public hearing is adjourned. And I think you have your marching orders. Can I have a motion to adjourn this application to our next meeting?
Michael Aronson, motion to adjourn the application to the next meeting.
Second.
Any objections? No objections. We will see you next month. All right. Thank you, Jody. Okay, we are now going to move on to agenda item C. This is Planning Board 07/2022 and VAR 05/2022. So this is Riverwalk. So the applicant can come up. I think as the applicant is walking up, we can get a status kind of update from Valerie.
Yeah. So I think,
The
right,
applicant.
right, so the applicant, right,
Yeah.
yeah, the applicant is just gonna be online tonight. Basically, what we're proposing, what we'd like to do tonight is, we provided the applicant a memo basically highlighting the outstanding environmental topics and environmental information that we need, that we feel that would basically get this project to the point where the board would be able to make determination of significance for this project. We met internally with Keller Sessions, and that included the village's wetland consultant. We also had Craig Stevens, the village's tree consultant. They were working with the applicant. So the memo that we provided for this month really basically highlights the outstanding information that's necessary and consolidates everything. And it's also based upon the part 2 EAF, which we went through, the board originally went through about about a year ago. And then we also, we listened to the video, we made sure we updated it also based upon additional information that came in. And so we are asking them to address in a narrative form all those impacts also that were identified as potential moderate to large impacts that could occur. So that they can identify what the impact would be for the particular project, as well as any mitigation measures that would be required.
Okay.
There's one thing that in terms of the board's, like what the board needs to do tonight is, if you had a chance to review the memo, whether you agree with that, if you want us to walk through, or if you have any questions on what we highlighted, be happy to answer those. But there is one thing that we'd like you to make a decision on, and that deals with some previously submitted studies. Keller Sessions noted that there was prior traffic and a phase 1, phase 2 environmental assessment studies that were submitted previously, but the board never authorized like a third-party review of those studies. And so we're asking whether the board wants to move forward with that tonight.
I think that, my perspective, yes, we want to take a look at that. I know that's a major component of the environmental impact of this project and that for the village. I don't know if any other board members have thoughts. So is that a vote that we should be taking, or is that just a consensus?
What do you want to do?
If you're looking to retain a consultant, I think you should have a vote.
Correct. So can I have a motion from the board to approve the review of a third-party consultant on behalf of the village regarding the traffic study?
And the phase 1 and phase 2 environmental assessments.
And the phase 1 and
The environmental
Phase
assessment.
2.
How would I make a motion to approve a third party reviewing the traffic studies and the phase 1 and phase 2 environmental assessment study, environmental site assessments?
Michael Aronson, second the motion.
I guess we'll do a roll call.
Sure. Michael Aronson.
Aye.
Eric Talbot.
Aye.
Carla Elliott.
Aye.
Phil Maria.
Aye.
Chair Roy.
Okay. All right, so with that put aside us, I guess we're at this point, are there any questions? There's a circulated base.
Part two.
Part two. I'm sorry, I'm really fading now.
No, it's sorry.
It's only Wednesday, so.
It's only-
I'm really in trouble.
Closer to Wednesday than Tuesday. though.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing at this point. I had it early tomorrow, so,
I have a question.
yeah.
And this is about actually the rules for the Conservation Development District, which is maximum height. So I noticed on the memo that the applicant is proposing, I think it's 59 feet. I think it's 59 feet, I'm not sure. And I think it says in the memo that 48 feet is the maximum. I read today that it's 35 feet. That was in the Conservation Development District. And I'm not sure if that's consistent with, so I was looking to see like where was there, where was I missing something, if I was missing something.
57 feet, 6 inches.
Yeah. But I think that the memo referenced that the maximum building height for the district is 48 feet, but I don't think in fact it is.
Can we get clarification?
Yeah. First, well then I'll. I won't.
And I was trying to bring this up as such a late point in the project, but I was like, that's weird.
Yeah, is that a hand up or is that?
That's my hand. It's my pointer.
I was thinking that was a hand up.
I'm sorry.
Everything was
Guilty.
not,
I'm looking.
Is there, while this is being looked into.
yeah, and I guess this is the other part of, maybe I can ask this question while we're asking it, because I think another part of one of the concerns of the application was the 50% coverage of the lot of 36 inches and higher. I know that we include this with the Water Street application, looking at the sightlines from the Hudson River.
Right.
And like there was there was interruption because they put two towers, so it was like a mass
Right.
of building. And while the rendering force noted it's quite attractive, doesn't appear the way it's rendered as 57 feet tall. But maybe that's measured from the backside where I can't.
It's measured from the back, so
There
it's
was
two things.
higher.
I don't know where you saw that, but in the bulk requirements table for the CDD district, it has maximum building height is 4 stories and 48 feet.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's written in the code somewhere else. And I was surprised to see it because it wasn't in the bulk. I just looked up Conservation Development District and it said, it told the intent, the spirit of the district, and then it went on to say like pretty quickly conditional uses. But like, then I was like, all right, well, maybe I'm not getting the whole picture here because there's probably something more to this.
Oh, okay, I see where you are. For the conditional uses,
So this is not a conditional use. This is
right,
an
so
asset, right?
for the conditional uses, cemeteries, places of worship, senior living, elementary or secondary education uses, higher learning educational uses, those are subject to a maximum height of 35 feet,
Okay.
2.5 stories.
All right, thank you. I'll look at the zoning. At the bulk
And,
regulations. That's fine.
Just because we already had a discussion on this at the zoning board meeting, I can tell you that on the height, and they have applied for a variance, but the property slopes down
Right, it's
very
quite steep,
steep.
yeah.
So in the front, they actually meet the,
I see. It's the rear.
it's the
It's the rear
rear.
where they need the variance. Okay, thank you for the question. That's very helpful.
And then when you're talking about the, I think which we talked at one of our prior meetings, just the sightline impact and that width, that's why. So when they're up in that
Right.
uphill side, it's not as.
Yeah, you don't see that height from the front.
when you're
from the
looking
street.
Right, of course,
towards The
yeah.
water,
Okay.
you can't see the water from the side either, but that's a whole other.
I mean, and that's one of the things that we recommended, we requested that they provide visual
Yeah.
renderings. That you have a better sense.
Additional visual
Yeah.
analysis.
Right. Okay. Are there any other kind of board questions, I'm assuming we don't really need to bring this. We don't, I mean, I'm assuming we don't really have any specific, any specific questions for the applicant. I think that they understand, they've been in touch with staff, so they understand what we need from them, so we can kind of finalize this review. I would just note also that EAC did also issue a letter on this application as part of and there's 1 or 2 letters that were sent to us this week.
Right, that was for LWRP consistency.
Yeah.
For the wetlands permit, they will be appearing back before the EAC again.
Okay,
Because once the wetlands mitigation plan and wetlands, some of the details of the wetlands permit are finalized with Jan.
okay. Okay, helpful. Can we have a motion to open the public hearing on this application?
Eric Talbot, to make the motion to open the public hearing.
Carly Diaz, second the motion.
Any objections? No objections, motion carries. Is there anybody here to speak to this application? No hands in the room. Is there anybody on Zoom? You can use the hand raise function, and I did not see anybody there. Can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
Go ahead.
Motion to adjourn.
Michael Aronson, second motion.
Any objections? No objections, motion carries. I think that we are clear with where we are with that one. Unless staff has any last minute questions or anything we didn't ask tonight. We did not have a motion to adjourn this agenda item this evening.
Carly, a motion to adjourn this agenda item to the next meeting.
I second the motion.
Okay, any objections? No objections, the motion carries. That this item is adjourned to our next meeting. We do have a couple of adjourned items on the agenda. I don't know if there's anything that we need to review on those two. I know there's 142, 144 South Highland. How many adjournments now is that on this application?
This is, I think, the second journey.
Okay. Do we have any update? Has this been moving in the background or?
We do not have any update.
Okay. This may be the first adjournment, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because they were
They
here,
were here at our last meeting, right?
they were
Yeah.
here. yeah.
They were at our last meeting. Okay. I know there was some questions and comments on that one, so we'll wait to see. And then 19 Camp Woods, this one's been adjourned for a couple of meetings.
Yeah, and there was an email.
From the attorney.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's over.
He said they're still working on something. Hold
The
on.
survey.
Yeah, they had an issue with the surveyor that
Okay,
has delayed them.
okay. So we'll just have to keep our hand on that pulse. And then, all right, so we do have additional business tonight. So there's the proposed zoning tax amendment for a fee in lieu of parking. And this was, we've been asked by the DOT to provide an opinion on the draft change. So maybe we can pull that up.
And then as part of, just for ease of your review of this, so the portions highlighted in yellow are the new proposed language.
So,
It's not just fee in lieu, it changes the parking waiver
Yes.
requirements, which, as you know, have been problematic.
yeah, no, right, so, this would eliminate our body's ability to grant parking waivers, right? I mean, that's the,
It also, it removes that sort of automatic waiver if they meet those criteria that
Right.
didn't really work. So,
Right.
Valerie, you're probably more familiar with this than
Yes.
I am.
So basically, what this project, I mean, what this does is it removes the parking waiver. What it is specifically identifying that if new development were to occur in the VC, SPN, and the NC2, which used to be subject to the parking waiver, that if it's building expansion, so if it's non-residential building or area expansion, then the applicant would need to provide either parking or payment in lieu of for the expansion only. For residential, it would be for new residential units only, not necessarily existing residential units. And then also for non-residential parking, where you're changing one use to another, that would then increase the overall parking requirements that the first 10 parking spaces, and this one is shall be waived, right? So similar to the last one. So it would automatically get an automatic waiver of 10 parking spaces. Then after that, they would either need to pay in lieu of or provide the parking.
Right, and that payment in lieu of is something that's reviewed by for the BOT.
That's correct. I mean, basically with the way the process would work, and the process is in the further section. Basically what would happen is an application would be made to the Village Board of Trustees. And they would have the option of either approving it, denying or modifying the request. But the Board of Trustees shall refer the matter to the planning board for recommendation prior to making that decision.
Right, so. Site plan application comes here, we take a look at it, we understand that the parking requirements aren't being met, we compare them to the rubric that's kind of presented at the top.
Right.
Determine, if they're beyond that and they need, rather than going to zoning for a variance, it could be coming. In zoning for a variance, would that still be applicable?
No, it would not. And there is some specific language in there that specifically says that when it's determined that required parking cannot be accommodated, including through parking at accessory locations, then the applicant shall either seek a variance from the zoning board of appeals or otherwise provide the required parking, notwithstanding the foregoing within the VC, SPN, and NC2 districts, no required parking shall be eligible to have its parking requirements satisfied by the provision of this subsection, except in pursuant to the fee in lieu of parking procedures.
So no variance in those
Right.
areas, you have to go through this
Because
process.
theoretically, I mean, more or
It's been an
less,
issue in other municipalities with fees in lieu where,
Try to get a variance instead of having to pay.
correct.
right, and in all reality, it is a way of varying, like, they don't have to provide, they just have to pay in.
And all of this is an acknowledgement that there is a finite amount of space and there's existing buildings and you can't, not every project and property will be able to provide that parking, but you want to be able to allow people to make improvements to their properties and bring in uses that are consistent with the
And,
village
and
plan.
to help the village with trying to provide additional parking. So it
Right.
goes into a fund, the village can use it for the village to improve additional parking.
Right, which is a whole other section that was in here that kind of spells out how that money is spent, and what it can be used on, and how much time the village has to spend it.
Right.
I think, one of the questions that I have is just kind of going up to section C there, the idea that the first 10 required parking spaces shall be waived. So
Yeah.
that's, again, just because this is, I think it's the scenario that comes before this board and under the current rule a lot, right? That there's, that you're changing, from one non-residential use to another, and now you increase the parking. And parking's not available, but you're not doing any work, right? This is, there's no change in bulk, there's no, you're just, it was an office and now it's turning into a restaurant with 30 tables and they
Right.
need additional parking spaces to accommodate the 30 tables, but it's kind of an as-of-right use in this existing space. So this is taking a number 10, which is, I think, it does sound like somewhere similar to the kinds of, the size of the waivers that this board has been asked to grant in the past. That number is, I think that's number is something that we can just kind of think about and maybe understand we think the right number in terms of formulating this.
I think it would be interesting to know, like, what's well, I know I could go back and look at this, but just what's the maximum required spaces for one non-commercial use versus another non-commercial use? And then what's the change, what's the difference between those two? Because if, let's say you do change from one non-residential use to another, or to another commercial use, and it's more intensive in parking based on the code, and that first 10 maybe will get you a lot of breathing room. And it may be that's really what you want to achieve anyhow, is that you don't want people to have to produce more parking than is necessary, but sometimes I guess the code may really want to see that, because that's what it's stating.
Right, I mean, over the last, it is maybe we're going to, over the last several years, how many, parking waivers have been granted by this board? I'm basing this on memory, I can remember one, I think that was over 8, and that was a very recent one, it was much over 8. That was a significant waiver that was granted because of the way that the law was written. But you know, I think that most of the vast majority of the ones that we've looked at have been under 10. And I don't know if that's, I guess the question is, you know, in that C category with the majority of changes in existing buildings where you're just kind of making that change, would almost, the majority of those would be not subject to the fee and lieu, right? And I guess that's the intent of the way that this is worded, kind of acknowledging if you can do it in your existing building, you want to be as flexible as possible to accommodate those changes of use versus somebody who's coming into a lot and putting something new in there and then the requirements are different. So I mean, I think that 10 number would be very protective. I think if it was, I think if it was 8, I think it would still probably be very protective. I don't think it would really change things that much, but I don't know that 10 is wrong, but if anyone have any thoughts on that.
I guess I just want to understand if there's what are the obligations for any parking spaces over 10 in terms of, are they subject to a waiver or the payment in lieu, or what, where they must provide the parking?
Right, so if there was 12, let's just say they had 12 spaces, then those 2 spaces, they would either have to provide the parking or have to pay in lieu of for the 2 spaces.
So no waiver, but just.
Right, so it would be, right, so the first 10 would be waived,
and
the other 2
that's
would
it.
not.
That's your limit. Okay, got it.
But that's only for the existing, right? If they were to increase the overall building footprint, then they would.
Or
that would
change the
change, right?
use significantly that it's not a condition, already a approved use.
Right, so if they went from, like, just say, a non-residential use to a residential use, then there would be new units, so then they would automatically have to do the payment in lieu of.
I guess I'm thinking of non-residential, are there any non-residential uses? Maybe I'm not reading this thoroughly enough. That doesn't involve a gross. I'm just trying to figure out if there's any kind of use that doesn't trigger any changes in floor area, but would generate more parking than the previous use. But
Well, there are a number of projects. I mean, one is, you saw one earlier this
Right.
year, like the Olive Opera House.
right.
Which was
Right.
like 80 spots that were
Right.
waived.
Right.
But I thought you were going, and this was because I don't think this is accommodated for here. Is there any difference between a as of right use versus a conditional use?
No, they're both captured in this, similar to the parking we went before.
Okay. All right, and if there's a use variance, does that apply?
So I think, well, I mean, the use variance, then let's just say it was the non-residential use to residential use, so then they would have to, it would be new units they'd be creating. If it was a non-residential use to another non-residential use and they got a use variance.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, well, I'm gonna say there's probably slim to no chance of. I mean, just because if it's a non-residential use to another, they would have to prove that every other non-residential use in that zoning district would not be economically feasible.
Okay.
Which I think just becomes very problematic since most non-residential district, I mean, most of the non-residential uses are pretty vast.
Right.
So I think you would more likely see a non-residential use to a residential use for use variance.
Right.
Or vice versa.
And that's where it kicks in on letter A, right? That's where it's based on the non-residential parking. Wait, so this is conversion, so if it is conversion from non-residential to residential, it would be B.
Right,
That's just because you're adding a new residential dwelling unit.
right.
So based on the increase of bedrooms, dwelling units or bedrooms, right? So if it's 1 bedroom, you turn it into a 2-bedroom, that also would trigger this.
Right.
I'm sorry, can you clarify again what the board's role would be and where it would be in the process?
Sure, so the board's role would be when when an applicant applies for the payment in lieu of, the village board would refer it over to the planning board for review.
So we would be an advisory
Yes,
board
correct.
to the board of trustees.
Right.
The board of trustees is the decider.
Right.
Right there.
But it specifically says the planning board's recommendation shall be provided after receipt of a complete application for site plan approval and completion of any required review pursuant to seeker. So therefore, you would have already had the time to review the site plan, feel comfortable with what it is that's being proposed. And so when the applicant would go before the village board asking for that theoretically, now it's not definite, but there would be most likely you would be already in support of this, you
Right,
know, the payment in lieu of.
right, because if the Board of Trustees says, no, sorry.
Right.
Then that site plan is no longer valid.
Right,
So if we're gonna endorse this to the Board of Trustees, it means we reviewed the site plan and we feel like it's appropriate. Based on all of the other boxes that we have to check off. All right,
Can I ask you a question? I feel like B, when I read that, it's just the way it's written, it confuses me. It's like off-street parking is required only for new dwelling units of existing dwelling units to propose an increase in bedrooms as long as the proposed additional dwelling units or bedrooms do not result in the loss of existing off-street parking spaces. It was like, okay, so so it's off-street parking is required for new dwelling units.
Comma,
or existing dwelling units that propose an increase in bedrooms, comma, as long as the proposed additional dwelling units or bedrooms do not result in the loss of existing park. It needs a couple of commas.
yeah, I think, yep, I'm gonna make note.
if you're
But
changing
it's
it,
like the off-street parking is required as long as it does not result in the loss of existing off-street.
Right, so if
Right,
you,
so if you're doing an addition on a building that's taking away parking.
Okay.
Okay.
that's helpful. Thanks for asking.
but this existing off-street parking spaces is only attached to the second half of that sentence, not the first. Because for new dwelling units, you need to do it no matter what happens,
So the
right?
convenience,
So-
they're already assigned to
Right,
that dwelling. Okay, thank you.
so I'm gonna make a note, or one of the comments is to clarify.
That's very minor. I was just.
It's
No, I mean, but these
That's
are,
some
but
commas.
but this is important because somebody else is gonna come in and read this, and we need.
Yeah.
It really is like, so,
And the Board of Trustees determines the amount of the payment in lieu of parking.
Correct.
Maybe it should be new off-street parking is required only for new dwelling units or existing dwelling units, propose an increase in bedrooms as long. Or something like, because if it's the existing already and you're not increasing anything, you don't need anything.
right, though, if it's existing already, but you're adding additional bedrooms,
I'm being
Right.
really silly.
then it is.
No, I think it's the clarity.
right, so I think the intent is not to turn around and take away.
Right.
The already
Off-street
off-street spaces,
Oh, right, gotcha.
but we will, I mean, like, we can try to clarify that. And I guess the one other thing that now that we were discussing this, and I'll just throw this out because technically this deals with residential and expansion, I mean, residential new dwelling units, non-residential expansion of building, non-residential parking, but there was the question of like, what if it went from a use variance, right? So what if you had a residential building and then converted it to non-residential? I guess we might need to add a scenario. I mean, I think that scenario would almost very rarely happen in today's market, but it could. So
Right.
maybe I'll note that.
10 years from now, and then everything changes.
Right.
And this is a different question in terms of, once it's referred to us, if I'm reading this correctly, it doesn't state, it states that the Board of Trustees has 62 days within receipt of our recommendation, but do we have a time period in which we have to act?
It does not, it doesn't look like it, no. So we can would you like to suggest one or?
Well, I guess, I'm just thinking in terms of how long it takes us to get through our process, but you're saying that this application wouldn't even come to us until we actually had approved site plan and VAR.
No, not approved.
Or
Have,
You
Yeah.
completed secra, but you've seen the site plan.
So-
VAR.
We've completed secret, meaning there's a negative deck or.
yeah,
Yes.
okay, because I mean, in terms of site plan and review, it can take us a while sometimes, and I don't know, would we be comfortable, acting on a recommendation for a payment in lieu of parking until we had been satisfied with the site plan?
But would
But
it
you
be a
can't
direct
give site
referral?
plan approval
Without-
until you know, if they get the,
Right,
okay,
so it's
so
it's
then
gonna be a coordination.
So it's gonna be a
basically.
back and forth.
Right, right. So once they say
Okay.
they want to do that, at some point you'll say, go to the village board,
Right,
apply for this, you know,
Right,
and the
and
village
then come
board
back to
would,
us.
right, send a referral over. Once you get finished seeker and then feel comfortable with the site plan, that you're ready to do site plan approval, you know, at that point you could. send it
right,
over.
so they would go to the village board, then the village board, we refer them, the village board refer it back to us.
Yes, I mean, either that or they could
it's
just.
kind
do
of an
it-
awkward, yeah.
Right, I mean, either that or we could, where they could do it first. I mean, I think what we were. What the intent is to allow them to apply to the village board. And then you refer it, but we want to make sure that you feel comfortable with the
Right.
site plan and seekers done before any action at the village board. If you would like to have it submitted, like have the referral first come from you to the village board for application, we can work that. Or suggest that tax change. So that the application would have to be for site plan approval first. And then you would refer it over to the village board to begin the application process
Yeah.
with a recommendation, as it like do the reverse.
Right, so that we're not, it's not going to them, coming back to us. coming
Right,
back to
right,
them,
maybe just going to
initiate
them.
on our end. If we're
right.
referring it out, then they already have our recommendation and.
Right.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It'll save them time too.
And if we just clarify on new non-residential, would that just be, under ag? It doesn't really say, it says for building or area expansion, doesn't say for new buildings.
Well, it would be for, yeah, because it wouldn't necessarily have to be for new build. I mean, it could be existing or new, but we could clarify that.
I think we should be very clear on that.
So how do you want this, how do you want these recommendations, right? I mean, did you want to put, does the letter want to come from the board, or do you want me to put it in a memo and then the board review it and then I send it over?
I would refer the latter. I mean, if you can do that and give us some time to take a quick look at it. I mean, but we do have a deadline on this, right? They asked for comments by a certain, that was the second resolution that was sent requesting us for comment from this board.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, within 62 days of this referral. There was a resolution.
Oh, that was already 45 days.
That's not fair.
So I should be able to, I should be able to have something for you, later on this week and then,
That can just be
Internally.
emailed, right?
yeah, I think so, right, Linda?
We don't need, there's not.
It's on the record of what exactly is going to be, yeah. Yes, and then you can provide any additional comments.
Comments or looks good, and then we can
Mhm.
forward it along.
Okay.
Okay, awesome.
I think this is a good idea. I think it's not ignoring that parking is needing, but then not really holding people back from doing it in full developments like that.
Yeah,
So how are you gonna get it? You're not gonna get it otherwise.
right. Yeah, and it builds in a means of the village providing, parking in village-owned areas and paying for that, which will benefit all of these projects.
And it takes away a lot of our discretion, which is also good.
Well, and that was the problem is you didn't really have
Well,
discretion.
I mean, but we were put in
Yeah.
a position of, having
Yeah.
to
Right.
decide on these.
With some
projects.
very bad language.
Right.
Yeah, it was like, yes.
Yeah, and it was very unpopular.
Sorry, we've been very, I mean, we've seen the problem that it causes, and you didn't have any discretion. It was if they met A, B, and
Right,
C, they got the
It's a
waiver.
rubric. It's plain and simple. So.
Water Street was one of those. with-
Right,
with
that's
that-
where it really came up.
That really came up big time. That.
Absolutely,
I think that's where the problem with the language really came to light.
right.
Because they were building a whole new building and were entitled to
The full
a
waiver,
full
everything.
parking waiver.
I
I think that's where we all realized that there was a problem with the language.
absolutely. All right, everybody.
This is
Yep.
nothing, anything I'm gonna have to vote on, just
No, so this is, it's a discussion, yeah. And we'll have a letter, all right. I don't think we need a motion, well,
Do we have
we don't
to
need,
have a motion to?
no, all right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Any objections? Thank you
I was
guys.
like, I'll.
Good night, Tiffany.